This is the explanation of what's kind of going on. And I know everything's been happening fast and furious, and it's not like a typical kind of negotiations where you have a negotiation team, and then you go back to the members and you talk about proposals at the table today, and then in sometime in the future you vote. This has been like Jackson's in a crisis. We've had to find a way to save Jackson. It's certainly been our priority. Obviously, none of us want to give money out of our pockets to save Jackson. But back in August, the county commissioners voted unanimously to take 5% from all Dade County employees and freeze step raises, freeze longevity, freeze the $1,000 flex dollars, and freeze any supplemental pays for all county employees. At that time, Jackson employees under SEIU with the nurses and with the healthcare professionals were the only contracts that were actually done and signed. We had signed ours in December '08. If you remember when Marvin O'Quinn was leaving, CNA was attacking, and we got our contract done in December of '08. So we were signed and done. Every other contract was open in Dade County where the commissioners could just declare impasse, and it would immediately bring the contract before them, and they would say, we're doing the 5% takeaway, freezing merit, longevity, etc., those four other things, right? So their proposal and their motion mandated that all county employees, all 30,000, do the 5% takeaway and freeze the other four items, the step raise, the longevity bonus, the flex dollars, and the supplemental pay where appropriate. And there are some, no nurses get the supplemental pay. Some of our med techs, some of our social workers, perhaps AFSCME gets a $50 supplemental pay that was part of a negotiations probably 10 years ago. So the commissioners have been moving through, and almost every union in the county has given up the money. Ours was in a different legal status because ours was already signed and done. So they had to declare fiscal urgency. And the only person in the county who can declare fiscal urgency is the mayor. And we've been arguing for the last 6 months, we're not going to give our money into the SIV. The system is broken. You're not collecting, $80 million not collected from patients who had insurance. That's a crime, right? You're not collecting monies. You have so many patients, and Sally Heyman was one of our commissioners, said, I didn't get a bill. Had back surgery here and didn't get a bill. They looked into the bill. They find not only did she not collect from the taxpayer, not only did Jackson not collect from the back surgery, when she got an MRI, they didn't collect for the MRI. So clearly the financial world at Jackson is broken. And we didn't want to just throw our money in and have it go into the SIV and people say, oh good, we got another $100 million to work with and we won't fix the broken system. Before we gave our money, we wanted to make sure that there were, a plan, and that there was a plan in place that we would not put money into a broken system. Now, everybody agrees that when you have a hospital in crisis, Grady's been in crisis, Cook County was in a turnaround this last couple years, those turnarounds take 12, 18 to 24 months. Those aren't done overnight. So Roldan did what we thought was a bad plan. We said no to the money. She said, okay, then I got to cut. And she put out what we call the disaster plan. A few weeks ago, she put out the plan to cut Jackson North, cut Jackson South, lay off 4,500 of the 12,000 employees. That was no answer to how to survive a crisis. That was a disaster plan. The only good news about the disaster plan is it got everyone's attention. It got the county commission in the game finally. It got the mayor in the, looking at Jackson for, we need it. This is not a Jackson problem. It wasn't like the Herald put out a couple editorials that said Jackson, heal thyself. Well, that wasn't going to happen. This is a community issue. We need community attention on this. And, we're part of the community. We're also part of the caregivers that deliver the care here every day. If you ask me, the caregivers are the only system at Jackson that isn't broken. Despite the falling down walls in the financial world or in the management world or in the consultant world, you guys have continued to deliver the great care every day, right? So we're the one system that's not broken. But our contribution was not going to be given without a fight until the systems were fixed so that when we put our money on the table, it wasn't going to be flushed down the toilet. So when all this attention came up with a disaster plan, then the county got involved and said that's not going to happen. The commissioners weren't going to let Jackson North be sold. They weren't going to let Jackson South be sold. Those should be money makers for Jackson, right? So they're putting, as the last Herald article said, all eyes are on you, Jackson. including the county commissioner. George Burgess was at the Public Health Trust meeting yesterday. Again, we're all going to be watching. We're going to be meeting 2 weeks. At that time, then, they were said the unions have to give the money. And it was the Mayor Alvarez put out a letter that said, I'm prepared to call fiscal urgency. All right, so that was the warning sign to us, that if we continue to say no to the money, they were going to declare fiscal urgency. The mayor was going to call fiscal urgency. And we have a letter on our web that is the actual letter from Mayor Alvarez to Dr. Roldan saying, I'm prepared to call fiscal urgency. That was the warning to us unions, both SEIU and AFSCME, that they were going to call fiscal urgency and then just reach in and take the same things the mayor has taken from every other county employee. The 5% wage cut, the freezing of steps, freezing of longevity, freezing of the flex dollars, and the taking away the supplemental pay. These 4 things would be frozen for a year and then spring back automatically. The 5% cut would be a 5% take back in salary. We didn't want it to be taken back from the hourly wage. That affects not only your hourly wage and your gross pay, but that also affects your pension. That affects what your PL time is worth. That affects what your E-days are worth. So we said, creatively, take it from pre-tax dollars to health care contribution. So your hourly wage will stay the same. Your pension will stay the same. Your value of your P-day, your E-day, everything else will stay the same. Many of you may give to VALIC, or on your pay stub it says VALIC perhaps $200. That's a pre-tax contribution. When you give $200 pre-tax, it comes out of your net pay about $170, $180 difference based on your tax bracket. So that's a little less painful way to take the exact same 5%. The boss in this case will get the exact same 5% savings. It's just not going to come off your wage. It's going to come off pre-tax dollars. Several unions in the county have chosen to do that. That's obviously the most painless way to give 5% back. It's going to be called on your pay stub insurance contribution fund. So when you'll see a donation of 5% of your gross pay pre-tax, okay, whether you get family or whether you get individual, that doesn't have anything to do with it. It's going to be a 5% contribution by each employee to the insurance funds in Dade County to return what will be equivalent to, over the next 18 months, $110 million to Jackson. So you guys are by far the employees, and that's all employees. I call this, there's equal haircuts. Dr. Roldan's going to give the 5%. Every employee is going to give the 5%. And it's going to yield $110 million over the next 18 months. That is by far the largest contribution anybody is making to save Jackson. For example, is loaning Jackson $29 million that they want paid back by next fiscal year. Right? The county commission gave Jackson $80 million to pay a contribution to Medicaid and match money in the state, and they'll get that $80 million back. So, you know, we are the only ones putting a hardcore $110 million on permanently. Okay, so when you talk about a $229 million deficit, $110 million of that will be coming from labor. That's huge. Now, the mayor was going to declare fiscal urgency and reach in and